Hey everybody, so in the previous video we demonstrated not only how to power circles or our visualization off of data, but to make the properties of those objects on the screen dependent on the data itself. So not only did we use this data set to create 7 different circles onto the screen, but we also made the circles and what they look like dependent on the data itself, right? So this circle here has a radius that reflects the data 1, as well as a position that reflects that data, all the way up to 7, which has renders this last circle infused with the number 7, and it has a radius dependent that reflects that 7, as well as a position that reflects that 7. Great, now what we're going to do is talk a little bit more about how this enter-exit update works. So just to re-emphasize this, I just described it in a video a couple ago, but when we do .data, we're marrying this selection with this data. And that gives us 3 different selections that we could then make. Just like in the one of the initial videos, we saw that when we select the SVG, we select the body, anything that happens after that pertains to that body. And then later on in that chain, we might append an SVG, after which everything after that pertains to that SVG, and then we might append a circle to that, and everything after that depends on that circle. Here, we have a branch after we hit data where we can select enter, the enter selection, or the exit selection, or the update selection. Now, what do each of those give us? When we do enter, we're given all those data points that do not have corresponding elements on the page. That gives you the opportunity to enter them onto the page. This is a data visualization, right? So if there's data that doesn't have a representation on the page, you should be given an opportunity to enter them onto the page. Similarly, with exit, we have elements that are on the page that no longer have corresponding data. In that case, we have the opportunity to remove them from the page. Now, if there are elements that are on the page and have corresponding data, we're given the opportunity to update them, because perhaps the data set, that piece of data, the datum, might have the data might be different now, and therefore we want the opportunity to change the element to reflect that new data. So that's what this selection does. So again, this all pertains to changes to the data set. In this case, we only have a static data set. Let's see a way to rerun this code with a new data set every time. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this out for a second. And let's talk about something called setInterval. This is available on the window of the browser, a method available on the window. If we do setInterval here, we see that it's available. That's what it looks like. It's a function. We're going to go ahead and do setInterval. It takes 2 arguments. One is a callback. I'm actually just going to refresh this so we can start with a blank page. So the first argument is a callback, and that's the code that you want to execute. And then the second argument is how often you want that code to execute. So this gives us the opportunity to execute code after after a specified interval. In this case, it's in milliseconds. We specified 2,000 milliseconds, so it's every 2 seconds. Just to demonstrate this, let's go ahead and put a simple console.log in here. So every 2 seconds, we should see a console.log. I just refreshed. There's the first one. There's the second one, etc. And it'll continue going. Great. Now in this case, we don't want to console.log every 2 seconds. We want to run this code every 2 seconds. So let's wrap this up into a function. We'll call it render circles. And it'll contain this code. Great. I'm going to go ahead and recomment this back in. And then here, we're going to render circles. So what we expect to happen here is the circles will appear after 2 seconds. There they are. After another 2 seconds, nothing happens. Why? Because after the first 2 seconds, we have the result of this .enter is, as we could see, thinking back to this, we have 7 data points here, and our selection yielded nothing. We have no elements, and we have 7 data points. So no elements, this entire circle is empty, and we have 7 data points. So in that case, this enter selection will give us those 7 data points that are not associated with elements. And we go ahead and append data, a circle, for each of those pieces of data. Then they appear on the page, and the second time that render circles is called, what do we have? We have 7 data points, each with corresponding elements, now circles, and we have 7 elements, circles, each with corresponding data. So all 7 of those circles are part of the update selection. The exit selection is empty, and the enter selection is empty. So we end up doing nothing on subsequent calls of render circles after the first call. Now, to make it actually do something, let's modify the data set down here. So let's make a variable here. Let's call it new number. Actually, let's make this even simpler. So we'll make just a single addition to the data set. Dataset.push, we'll add an 8 this time. So let's go ahead and add an 8. So as soon as this executes, it'll add an 8 to this array. And then when render circles is called again, we're going to have 7 members of the update selection, which we're not doing anything with. We're not selecting the update selection. We'll do that in a different video. And then 1 member of the enter selection, because enter 8 is now a new member that's a data point without an associated element. So it is going to be the result of .enter, and this code will be executed on that 8 alone, and it'll be entered onto the page. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So after 2 seconds, we see the first 7 appear. Then after 2 more seconds, we see the 8th appear. Great. Just to make that point very clear, I'm going to change the spread of these circles a little bit so we can see them a little more clearly. So I change that to .5, and we'll see, there it is. There's the 8. Let's make a 9. Let's make a 10, and see what that looks like. And actually, I'm going to decrease this to save you time. So after 1 second, 7 appear, and then we render the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, all at the same time to this new data set. So when .enter is called that second time, it includes those 3 new pieces of data without associated elements. Let's go ahead and sort of automate this. I'm going to make a variable here called new num, and we'll start it as 8. And we're going to here, let's dataset.push new num, and then call new num plus plus. So we're modifying new num to then become 9, and every 1 second we're adding a new piece of data to this data set, and it'll first start with just 1 through 7, then it'll be 1 through 8, then 1 through 9. We'll have a new member 8, new member 9. So every 1 second we should see a new circle added. So the first 7, there's the 8th, there's the 9th, there's the 10th, there's the 11th, etc., and that'll continue. So that demonstrates how .enter works. In the next video, we'll visit .update.